Thanks for joining us for the Long Island Sound Podcast. Each week we explore new music and dive deeper with the artists and their stories behind the music. Please subscribe and rate and review us wherever you stream this podcast. Here's your host, Steve Yusko.
Hey, we're here in Long Island, and I came across a great artist from Arizona. We're currently in Arizona, Ryan David Orr. I'm telling you, I listened to his music today, and as I was telling Ryan, it's just absolutely beautiful. And I can't nail him down to a particular genre, which is exactly what I love, because there's so much depth in his music and in his art. So let's get right to it. Let's check out his song, Juvenile, and we'll meet David right after the song. Hang with us.
They don't know why I dress like that. They don't know why I cry at every Greg Rocky film. Mother said, there's too much killing now. I wish that I could go back to a time when all of their lips were moving and I didn't understand the words. Everything they say seems meaningful, and Savannah is always beautiful. Whenever she says she fell in love again. That too, you wanna be part of something innocent and true. Centuries of fairy tales, there's not a single one for you. They don't know why I talk like that. They don't know why I tear my hair out over online conversations with these fatal words. And tired of defending, I resign to disappear. No, Savannah, I'm not angry, I'm just trying to be heard. You might say that you couldn't see how it mattered all that much to me. You might call it juvenile, I took it all too hard. You can forget my face, forget my name, I'm never gonna use them anyway. If I don't reach the edge by morning and fall right off into your arms, then I can't promise I'll be back at all. It's such a cynical American crowd. They all get loud about the walls they're building, and they flaunt it like Avalon. But the magic's gone, and nobody remembers why. To you who are about to die, we wish you strength in the face of failure. Will you teach us to be free and how to laugh out loud, to not live tragically? You knew there'd be days like these. You told me once, all things break in two. Yes, even all the good ones do. Even all the good ones do. You might say that you couldn't see how it mattered all that much to me. You might call it juvenile, I took it all too hard. You can forget my face, forget my name, I'm never gonna use them anyway. If I don't reach the edge by morning and fall right off into your arms, then I can't promise I'll be back.
tell you, when I read Ryan David Orr's background, I was really amazed by the fact that his parents, one, I believe his dad was a visual artist and his mother a singer-songwriter. And it looks like the gene pool came right down into Ryan's wheelhouse, because it seems as though, and I'm jealous, I'm telling you, he's got the best of both worlds. And with that, I want to welcome Ryan David Orr to the Long Island Sound Podcast. Good to have you, Ryan.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Good to be here.
And thank you for being my guinea pig as I try out Riverside.
Sure. Yeah.
It's so good to have you here. What I find fascinating about just getting the tip of the iceberg of your music is that it crosses many genres and you have many influences. Almost, we'll go over that, but too few to name all in one podcast, I think. But the feel I've got from Juvenile was that world sound to it, particularly in the percussion. It's just a really beautiful song. So I got to stop yapping. Welcome to the program.
Thank you.
So you're originally from Oregon, Ashland, Oregon. You went down south, outside, I guess, the Nashville area in North Carolina.
Yep.
And eventually back to Oregon and then settled in Arizona. So where are we reaching you in Arizona today?
Yeah, so I live in northeastern Arizona, so it's up in the mountains. It's not the Arizona that most people think of when they think of Arizona. It's not desert. We have probably 6 or 8 inches of snow outside. It's about 29 degrees where I'm at. So it's northeastern part of the state, kind of close to New Mexico. But yeah,
gotcha. Yeah, my daughter was in the other part of the state, Tucson.
Yeah.
For 2 years. And the heat kind of got to her, so she came back east to New York, where, by the way, New York is the center of the world, particularly Brooklyn these days.
Yeah,
So,
right. Yep.
Just kind of amazing what's happened with music. So what I found, tell me about your early experience with music finding you, and how did it come about, really?
Yeah, so like you mentioned, my mother was a singer-songwriter, and so there were kind of always like instruments around, guitars around. She was always playing stuff. There were always like musicians at the house rehearsing for things.
Wow.
So it was always just kind of around. I started playing violin when I was about 7 years old, and that was more like my mom got me into that, not necessarily to try to like make me a musician, but more to just, as like a supplement to academics and stuff. And so I played violin for a number of years. And then I started getting really into like classic rock and grunge rock and just rock and roll. And when that happened, I started getting more interested in like guitar and bass and things like that, rock band instruments. And so it took a while before I really figured I could make it. I could make music or create it.
Right.
And so I kind of started
when you
off
say
slow.
Sorry to interrupt you. When you say a while, what do you mean? In your teens, did it kind of strike you that, hey, I can start writing songs and I need to express myself?
Yeah, I think so. I think I was probably 14 when I tried writing my first song. It took a while before I wrote anything I liked. That was for that was for sure. I wrote a lot of songs that I don't even remember now that were crap. and it took a while before I kind of got it had my own voice, and it didn't just feel sort of affected or derivative of other things that were happening. So.
Right. What's interesting is, this is just me, I find the violin to be one of the most challenging string instruments out there.
Yeah.
And the fact that Mom had the smarts to try and have you tackle, a fretless instrument and get that muscle memory. And tell me if this is true. From a knucklehead who didn't woodshed his instrument properly, that's why there's a little bit of dust, which you can't see on the guitars behind me, is I would assume that it really trains your ear very early with the violin to find the notes. And how did you find that as learning the instrument early on?
Yeah, I think that probably is true. I also was singing in choir at the time, also kind of grew up doing both of those things. And so that was another area where, where finding the note is very relevant in real time, like choir, finding it physically. And then,
Sure.
As far as, I have heard people say that violin is like the most challenging instrument to learn to play or in the world or something like that. I don't know how they quantify that necessarily, but yeah, I think that it definitely trains your ear, but it also, I think that was my time of really learning music theory, like when I, was reading sheets and like reading charts and stuff like that. When I write now, I don't go as technical as that, but I think it was a good foundation, because if you start off with that kind of foundation, then you sort of think in those terms. And when you're finding notes, you're looking for note relationships and things like that, it does sort of lay a foundation for that, approach to the craft.
I agree with you 100%, particularly, as I'm looking at your background and your music, and for the length of time that you've been studying music and playing music and producing music, your brain gets, in my opinion, you get wired that way. I have a daughter, Faith, who did the introduction, and she's into puns so amazingly. We kind of pun around at home a lot. And you find yourself moving in these directions. It's the weirdest thing, but I find a lot of musicians think musically, think lyrically, think poetically,
right?
And you can't help yourselves.
Yeah, sure.
So, and I'm sure you've been asked this question about how the muse strikes you and what's your method. I mean, are you the type of artist who, on a whim, write something down, record something, or do you sit down at a table and say, I'm going to write a song right now? Or maybe it's both. I don't know. You tell me.
Yeah, it kind of depends on the song. It kind of depends on what I'm inspired to do at the moment. I think a lot of times what'll happen is I get an idea, a snippet of something, like a lyric or a melody, sometimes a rhythm, and I'll like write it down, or I'll record it like on my phone, little voice recorder, something like that, where it's just to capture the idea. And then I'll kind of like leave it for a while and then come back to it. And then when I come back to it, I'll do more of the like, okay, I'm going to sit down, I'm going to write a song, but I'm going to use this as a seed. This is where I'm starting, is this idea. And at that point, I'll probably have kind of an idea, at least for like the vibe of the song, to, is this going to be a fast, slow, big? Is it going to be intimate? Is it going to be, lots of production? Is it going to be very minimal? Things like that. And so then I approach the writing. Lyrics are most often the last thing that happens, as far as like really finishing the lyrics, solidifying the lyrics. That's usually the last thing.
Now, do you ever start with a title, or since the lyrics are the last thing, is the title the last thing as well?
That's sort of circumstantial, I guess. For like the song "Too Hip for Heaven," which is another one that we're listening to here, is that one. That line, "Too Hip for Heaven," that came as part of how I conceived the song. And that was just kind of a random occurrence. I'm, like walking through a parking lot, and there was a guy on his phone walking the other way, almost ran right into me. And I sort of, under my breath, was like, oh, too cool for school, too hip for heaven. and so that stuck as the lyric that I started with to write the song. And then it just kind of became the title. Like, I didn't intend for it to necessarily be the title at first. It's just kind of, that made sense as the title,
Right. Now, when you come out with a song that you've completed the song, you've got the seeds of a title. Now, I assume you got to research it so it's not like any other title that's out there to some degree, or that doesn't really matter?
Not really. I don't really think about, as far as song titles go, I don't really think about that. I think about that more in terms of like band names or things like that. But as far as song titles go, I don't really think about it too much. There's usually, if it's a common phrase or word, there's probably several songs out there with that title, It's just kind of
gotcha.
how it happens.
So my assumption would be that do you approach songwriting pretty much as a solo artist, crafting both the lyrics and the music, and then you bring it to the studio and bring your band or other instrumentalists in on it. Is that how you approach it?
Yeah, that most often is how I do it. I have had other like side projects, other bands that I was in where there was more collaboration in the writing process. I think musically, I work well with others better than lyrically. So like I think it's easier to get together with people and create create a song, create a music scape or soundscape or whatever, and feel like we can really collaborate on that. With lyrics, they're so personal and they're so specific usually when I write about stuff that I don't know that I just don't even really try to write a lot of lyrics with other people, and it might work fine or whatever, but I think I connect with it a little differently, like writing poetry or something like that.
Gotcha. So let's talk about the song that we heard coming into the program, Juvenile. Like I said earlier, it had this world feel to me. I never ask an artist to explain the song per se, but maybe you could tell me how the germ of an idea of how that muse hit you and you developed it into Juvenile.
Yeah, so I actually did recorded a demo for it by myself in my studio where I played drums and I did a bunch of other layers and stuff like that. But I'm not a great drummer. I can keep a beat, but I can't do anything intricate, And so when I was trying it, I kept trying to do these sort of like flams, these little rolls. And so that's kind of how the idea went down in the beginning as far as like getting tracked. But then when I played the demo for my drummer, the guy that I actually had come and play drums, he kind of took it and interpreted that the way that those drums are played. And so a big part of this song for me was the drums. Like that felt like a really big part of this creation. And so it was very specific how we set up the drums, like dropping the snare off of the snare and really focusing on the toms so that it does feel kind of, like you say, like it has a world sound. It feels more like percussion as opposed to drums, And so that was kind of the backbone for that.
Yeah, that's interesting how that structure came about. I just had a drummer, producer, percussionist named Chris Marshak on, and he talked about silence and reductionism in bringing things down. And a lot of he's played a lot of different genres, but used brushes. Yeah. And the brushes had just a great sound for the particular song that we played of his. That was really kind of a cool attack on things. And sometimes you can approach production with throwing a lot into the stew, so to speak, and now you got to pull the carrots out and the potatoes, and maybe we'll just stick with the rice instead. Yeah. So, so we alluded to your background. So you went to school for literature, if I recall, and so you have.
So I teach college English. I studied English and I also studied film for undergrad. So those are my two main focus when I was in. So
you made mom and dad happy with your career choices, I guess.
Yeah.
God, I wish I did that. So let's talk about the song that we're gonna hear that you spoke about, Too Hip for Heaven. Just give me a little snippet of how that muse came together, and then we'll play it for our audience.
Yeah, so like I was mentioning, I sort of had this random interaction with a person in a parking lot, and that just kind of got the line Too Hip for Heaven in my head. And I started thinking about one of the jobs that I had before was as an academic advisor at a college here, and a lot of times we see students who might have the best of intentions and get scholarships and things like that that blow the opportunity or throw it away or that kind of thing, and it's a very small, very tight-knit community, and I think that has a lot to do with it sometimes in people's decisions and stuff. And so I started thinking about that and just thinking about the idea of this person sort of trapped, not physically trapped, but trapped kind of by their own understanding of reality, or trapped by their own interaction with their world. And And so it's just kind of one of those things where it's somebody more or less trying to escape or wanting to escape and not knowing how, and how to kind of find that sense of freedom and forge their own path or something like that.
Wonderful. All right. You've given us a good foundation and a lot. See, I didn't know you were such a big brain guy. I'm so intimidated now.
Oh, jeez.
So let's, hey, everybody, let's listen to Too Hip for Heaven right now, and we'll be right back with Ryan David after the song. Check it out.
Remember when the best you thought that you could do was marry soon? You never even knew if you'd like kids. Don't you even look backwards. And I will keep your secret. You should leave and don't believe them. They never paid attention like you did. Don't you even look backwards. They were always heavy with the noise. Theirs go to 11, theirs go to 11, and they're willing to bet it. The petty quiet boys are too hip for heaven, too hip for heaven. You just wouldn't get it. Better figure it out before your mother gets back from the pawn and the dealer at the laundromat. There's not a lot of time to think twice out there. Don't you even dare look backwards. You were staying in the old hotel and both your sisters shared the same bed. You don't mind sleeping on the floor. And these little nightmares that they scream about don't amount to much, considering the ones outside the door. They were always heavy with the noise. Theirs go to 11, theirs go to 11, and they're willing to bet it. The petty quiet boys are too hip for heaven, too hip for heaven. You just wouldn't get it. Better figure it out before your mother gets back from the pawn and the dealer at the laundromat. If you're gonna try to find a good life somewhere, don't you even dare look backward. And while you wait around here dreaming of the day your luck will change, the world moves on around you, and no one comes looking for you. And the simple-minded notion that you are lost and broken is so strange. They never listen. They were always heavy with the noise. Theirs go to 11, theirs go to 11, and they're willing to bet it. The petty quiet boys are too hip for heaven, too hip for heaven. You just wouldn't get it. Better figure it out before your mother gets back from the pawn and the dealer at the laundromat. Just let all of the mad words hang in the air. Don't you even dare look backwards. Don't look back. Don't you even look backwards. Don't look back. Don't you even look backwards. Don't look back. Don't you even look backwards. Don't you even look backwards.
Hey, man, that's a beautiful song.
Thank you.
You know, as I listen to songs now, and it's very interesting listening to your song or listening while an artist is listening along with me. And as you probably recognize, my music base was really in the 70s. And what really struck me about the song vocally was like a Cat Stevens vibe to it.
That's cool.
And which is a big compliment to you, you know. And now I'm talking to a guy who is, grew up on grunge in Oregon. So
Yeah. Well, I kind of grew up on Cat Stevens though too. He was big in my upbringing.
Yeah. So, you say in your bio, there's like too many influences to list. But if you could give me your top three influences in the voice that you have today for music, what would it be? What would they be?
I think I am forever stuck with the influence of Pearl Jam.
All right, brother.
Yeah, I think they are one of my all-time biggest influences. And, vocally, musically, all that. I think Radiohead is probably another one that I keep going back to. And I don't know, maybe, one of my favorite classic rock bands, from when I was classic rock when I was growing up was Cream. They were,
oh wow,
they were always one of my favorites. I just loved, I loved the guitar lines. I loved the drum lines. I loved the harmonies,
Yeah, and it was nice that Eric got the guys back together.
Yeah.
Before the demise.
Right.
So that's kind of cool. Let me ask you something out of left field. What's the last full album that you've listened to? Do you recall?
The last full album I listened to is called Nicks and Grazes by a band called Palm.
Okay.
I actually just went to see them a couple weeks ago in Phoenix. And a friend of mine kind of turned me on to the band and this new album. And so I listened to it a bunch before going to see the band. And it's really technical, very intricate, what they, you'd call math rock. But it's very melodic. And so really bizarre time signatures, really interesting textures, that kind of thing.
Nice. So they're called Nicks and Grazes.
Well, the name of the album is Nicks and Grazes, and then the band is called Palm. Yeah, they're from Philadelphia.
Okay.
I think.
Okay. The reason I ask is because I put chapter marks in, which are going to have links to your music on Spotify and your bio, and other people that we may mention. Always like to throw some kudos out to them and.
Sure.
Maybe that's something somebody else would get into and appreciate, because music heals the world as far as I'm concerned, no matter what the music is, So that's cool. I was a little worried asking that question because I was afraid you were going to say, nah, I've never listened to a full album.
Yeah, right. Never, ever. No, I've listened to lots of full albums. It's probably less recently than and actually that might not even be the last one that I listened to. It actually was probably something I listened to in my living room just a few days ago. Actually, over the holidays, we listened to a bunch of, my wife and I, the only thing we play in the house is vinyl records. So we have stacks of them everywhere, and we're just constantly, then we're always listening to full albums, It's not like a Spotify playlist or something. So it was probably something more along the lines of like maybe the Brandenburg Concertos, or, that was probably the last album I listened to.
Oh, cool. Yeah. That's neat. it's interesting. So you also produce music as well, and you work with other people and help put things together. And what I found pretty, kind of jumping off the full album thing, I found it kind of interesting that there's a big push, maybe it's been around for a while and I just didn't really zone in on it, to put out EPs, to put out, 3 songs here, a song there.
Yeah.
What's your take on that approach? And is that something that you do with the artists that you work with?
I think it's a good idea nowadays. It's funny, we've kind of come almost full circle from, how music would have kind of been released like in the 50s or something, where, you got a single, you release a single, and then you promote that, and maybe there's a B-side or there's a couple extra songs that go along with it. But it's like, you build up the momentum for the single. And then we've kind of come back around to that now, where, people don't really release a lot of full albums, or at least the full albums aren't getting the airplay or the spins that the single did or the couple singles did. And so I think in that sense, an EP is great because you can focus on quality versus quantity. You can maybe 15 songs isn't that great of an album. Maybe 10 songs is a pretty good album, whereas the 5 hottest tracks off that album are maybe like an incredible 5 songs, you know?
Gotcha.
So I think there's merit to it. And I think it's also, as far as modern music distribution, Spotify, Apple Music, all that stuff is concerned, it makes sense. You know, you can put a single out there and make a big deal out of that single. It can get on playlists. It can, you know, this is kind of how people consume music now. And so I definitely think it's a good idea. It can be a really good idea. I'm currently just starting to work on an EP with a producer in Nashville named Ken. He was the drummer for Wilco, and he's a producer, has a studio. He's pretty well known, got a great track record. I'm excited about this process.
What's his name?
Ken Coomer.
Ken Coomer?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I listened to Wilco and Uncle Tupelo for years, and he drummed for, you know, so I was listening to him a long time before we started talking about this project. And he suggested doing an EP. He suggested, you know, like, if you're going to do a full album, still keep that small. Keep it to like 8 songs. But if you're going to, you know, an EP is perfect. Like 5 or 6 songs, that's a good, a good solid amount. So I've kind of been looking at that as what a lot of artists are doing now anyway. You know, the sort of...
Yeah, I think they keep their audience engaged. It's more economical, obviously, to do that and that focus in. And then it's, you know, I asked you a loaded question about, you know, what full album did you listen to? Because I was curious about that, because I don't know if everyone has the attention or the time, because we were in a busy world, I wish I did, to sit down and just listen to, you know, like when I was a kid. I mean, we played it till the needle wore out, you know. And for those who don't know, the record vinyl is played with a needle, and there are 2 sides to the album, just to educate some of the younger. You got to flip it over, right?
Yeah, that's actually why I like it as a medium, because it's so much more intimate. You can't just like push play and then forget that it's on and walk away and leave. You know, you got to kind of like set it up on the turntable. You got to place the needle. You got to flip it halfway through. You got you got to be there and kind of like nurture it through the process. So I kind of like that.
And that's what's neat about artists like you know, Jack White coming out with vinyl and you know, doing the you know, the CD, the vinyl, and you know, Spotify. Because let's face it, most artists are not going to make money or income off Spotify. I hate to say it,
right?
You know, unless you're in the millions and millions of downloads to do so.
Right.
So what do you got to do? Is you got to go out there and gig and sell merch, which is I find kind of interesting.
Yeah.
So do you still go out and play locally, gigs on your own or band? What's your setup when you go out?
Yeah, both. I play a lot of solo acoustic shows, and then I play I'd say probably 10 or 15 full band shows a year, something like that. I focus more on promoting my solo stuff. I've done other projects with bands, and so there are kind of bigger rock and roll sounds that I've got with some projects, and we'll play that stuff live. But I think more recently I've focused a lot more on the solo acoustic show. I really kind of like that vibe and the intimate, you know, nature of that, and focus on the song and songwriting and stuff. So yeah, I still do play a number of shows a year and sell merch, sell vinyl, sell CDs, all that stuff. So, yeah.
Excellent. Hey, listen, let's just take a quick break here, and when we come back, I want to talk about some of your other endeavors. Okay. So hang out with us, everybody. We'll be right back. At the Long Island Sound, we're much more than a podcast. We're building a community. Please go to gigdestiny.com, check out all our social media links, subscribe wherever you listen to the podcast, please comment, call the listener line, tell us what you think, what questions we should ask, who we should have on the show, and most of all, we thank you for your generous support, and remember, support the artists who are guests on the show. Now back to the podcast. Hey everybody, we're back with Ryan David Orr. Ryan, so great to have you here. And I have a confession to make. You know, I'm reading where you've lived. You're out in nature. You're with the chickens, and you're in these beautiful areas. And I'm like, son of a gun. I bet he never hit any traffic. You know. But what? Yeah, I know. I gotta go out west for sure, especially here on Long Island. We have taxes and traffic, and they're both horrible. Anyway, so much about me. But so what's interesting is that you've got the left brain, right brain thing going for you. You've got the visual arts and you've got the music. Tell me about the visual arts aspect and the projects you've worked on, because I'm really interested in what you do and how you balance it, really.
Yeah. So I've always been fascinated by my dad was a photographer and painter, but I was always sort of fascinated by photography and by the frame and film. And so one of the things I used to do with him when I was growing up is go on like photo shoots, go around town and do photo shoots and stuff like that. And he bought me my first like digital camera years ago. And so I really got into photography and film and videography as I kind of as a parallel to music. It just kind of made sense. When I did my undergrad degree, I studied film and media studies, and the intention behind that was that I wanted to make music videos. So I would be writing these songs and producing the songs, and I kept having these sort of ideas for the videos that would go with them. And so that's been largely what I've focused on over the years, has been oftentimes writing or storyboarding the video and then getting actors together and doing like, film productions for them. And I just a few years ago started like submitting to film festivals and things like that with videos. And so this last one that I did, we released the video, I want to say it was like September, October 2022. And we submitted to a bunch of film festivals, and so we're starting to get some of that that spin, that play. It was just accepted to it won Best Music Video at like Switzerland International Music Film Festival, and it was accepted to some other pretty cool film festivals, kind of international spots. And it's a video for the song. The song is called Mr. Anderson. It's from my latest album, New Imperials, which is also where these songs that we're listening to are from. And so it was a process of writing the story, storyboarding it, getting the actors together, getting locations together, going out and just trying to capture all the footage and then editing it all. So film and photography are kind of my main visual arts aside from music. What
I find interesting about that, if I look at how I judge a good song or a good singer-songwriter, is they're helping me create the vision in my mind when I listen to the song. They have no control of that, but if they're good with their words and the setup and stuff like that, it can bring me to another place. Now, it seems the reciprocal of that is you're storyboarding a song. So, are you here's a question for you. Are you working with the artist to get their vision of what the song is, or are you relying more on what your take and your vision of the song is to put that video together?
Well, I mostly focus on doing my own music.
Oh, okay. All right, we'll throw that question out the window.
Yeah, it's a little different than interpreting other people's stuff.
Okay.
But it is still kind of a process of, like you're saying, getting sort of inspired to see these things in your own head. Right. So it's like instead of taking somebody else's external input, it's sort of my own, sitting with the song for a long time and then envisioning how this sort of narrative plays out or how that looks in imagery or whatever.
Yeah, I can almost equate it to, my dad telling me stories about the family gathering around the radio pre-television and how enjoyable it was in a shared experience with different pictures in each person's mind of what's going on, and how like the letdown of, can you believe this, a letdown of TV, or, they were amazed by TV, but then you're given an image. How many people you're a literature professor. How many times do you read a book that becomes a movie and the images in the movie are disappointing to what's in your mind, right? Am I wrong?
Right, sure. No, absolutely. That's definitely the case. Yeah, everybody has their own little sort of subjective idea of what what this thing looks like, whatever it is.
All right, so
they take that.
So you're a control freak because you do video.
Yeah.
All right. So,
Exactly.
See now we're getting into
this is what it's
this
about.
is what it's
this
about.
Is what it looks like.
You got on the Steve Yusko couch on the Long Island Sound. So if you thought this was a podcast about music, no, this is about the psyche. This is about imagery.
Yeah.
This is about your childhood. We're going to go back, okay?
Right.
And you've had a very disturbing childhood. All that music forced upon you, all those instruments, your mother torturing you. Play that violin. Practice.
Yep, vicious.
Yeah,
terrible memory.
as I said, my father played the radio, and he played it well. I did have a piano though.
Yeah, well,
I had a piano.
Yeah.
In the TV room, which is a big mistake, Anywho. Hey, let's so what do you've got coming up as far as festivals, gigs, that sort of thing? Does it really hit in the late spring for you, or how do you approach it?
Yeah, I'd say spring it gets underway. I think the first thing I have on the books as far as performance goes is like mid-March or something. I'll be playing a lot around the mountain here. We're kind of isolated, kind of remote. Mm-hmm. This isn't like a place where you accidentally drive through or happen to drive through. About 3 hours northeast of Phoenix. And so I'll play some shows down there, but it's a little bit of a hike just to travel down there. And then I'll get out of the state sometimes this year, a few times probably, and play like maybe up in Oregon, probably try to play in Tennessee, do some stuff like that. But yeah, I'd say March through September, October is usually the good season.
All right, so you've played, I guess, around Nashville. Have you ever played east, like in New York or on the East Coast at all?
Yeah. Yeah, actually, I used to live in Nyack, New York.
Oh, yeah.
So
Rosie O'Donnell lives in Nyack.
Yeah.
If they haven't tossed her out. Yeah, she's still there, I think. Right across what used to be the Tappan Zee Bridge. And they call it the Mario Cuomo Bridge. I still call it the Tappan Zee Bridge. I'm just saying, because...
Yeah, I would probably have to if I was there. It's just how I know it. But I lived there for a couple of years, and so I played around there a little bit. I played a few shows here and there, like in Brooklyn and in the city and stuff like that. So yeah, I did. I have played some.
Well, you know what? I knew if we talked long enough, you would have some sort of New York connection. So I can just, my wife goes to me, she says, you mostly focus on guys, from the area. And I said, I've gone out, I said, I'm broadening my perspective. So now that we found it, I feel justified. So, Ryan, it's not about you. It's how you make me feel. And, the fact we did not discuss Nyack before the show. And, if anybody busts my balls, I could say, hey, He's got a new, and he actually said Brooklyn, and he pronounced it right. So it's hey, let's talk about. Give me some of the muse and the development for her wedding day, and then we'll have a listen to that.
Sure. Well, so like as the title would imply, this was actually a song that I wrote, inspired by my wife. Like I just got married a couple of years ago.
Congratulations.
And thank you. When I was kind of writing this song, there was just a bunch of sort of a menagerie of images from our whole time being together before we were married, and these experiences, these shared experiences that we had and stuff like that. And so it's a love song and it's a wedding love song, but it's also very much a kind of intimate, personal discussion about these shared experiences. Yeah, I think that's
pretty good. All right, let's listen to For Her Wedding Day. We'll be right back after the song. Check it out, everyone.
You woke up terrified, a screaming beast inside. You don't know how to survive the neighbors. You watch your hummingbirds fight without their words. In this house it's her, we do no favors, and you are so lovely on the inside. You are so lovely on the outside. Like a patchwork quilt, like that barn they built, like they look on with fingers uncrossing, like we bow and pray where that old dog lay, like you held me so close when I lost it. You are so lovely on the inside. So lovely on the inside. So lovely on the outside. So lovely on the I woke up breathing fast. Once that dream had passed, and we lay still while the soft light comes streaming. You turn away and smile. You say it's just my style, 'cause I'm so hopelessly lost when I'm dreaming. So lovely on the inside. So lovely on the inside. So lovely on the inside. So lovely on the
That was absolutely beautiful. Thanks for
Thank you.
thanks for sharing your art with us. That's from the new album, New Imperials, by Ryan David Orr. And I spoke to you about this before the show. I really am enamored by singer-songwriters because you guys really bare your souls in an artistic way in many degrees. And you're able to say things that us regular humans have difficulty expressing sometimes. And I think that's why we like music, because it goes down into our souls and helps us bring up the emotions and maybe remind us, reminds me to go talk to my wife and tell her how beautiful she's, not only on the outside but on the inside as well. So yeah, thanks for that.
Absolutely.
It was really great. Is there anything that we've missed that we should cover before we say our so longs till the next time?
I don't think so. I mean, the new album is, people can check it out at ryandavidorr.com. It is available on 180 gram 12-inch vinyl. And yeah, but that's, over this next year I'll be releasing some more singles and EP and some stuff like that. And so
great.
Lots more music to come.
Wonderful. Well, let's stay in touch. And if you make it to the East Coast, please look me up. I'd love to have a cocktail or a coffee, or, coffee's probably better out west. But Anyway, I say this often in many times. We can account for what we have in the bank, can never account for the time we have left, and I really appreciate the time you've given me.
Absolutely. My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you for joining us today. I appreciate the time you spent with us. Please subscribe and comment and visit us at gigdestiny.com. Till next time, be generous with your joy, keep your spirits high, and let the music take you on a journey. Be well. Peace.